Welcome back to another exciting deep dive into Think a Better Thought Training Your Mind for Success 101 with the author, yours truly, Shane Boring. How could it get any better? Let me tell you how much better it can get. Today, we're going to tackle a big one: mastering fear and tearing down the walls. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Seneca. Yeah. I lived most of my life in fear. So all this is what helped me, and I'm suggesting you take it and adapt it for yourself. I'm going to read a lot out of this chapter. Fear is an extremely negative emotion caused by a belief that someone or something is dangerous and likely to cause a harm or threat. Fear, anxiety, and depression are our own creation. Think about it. It's much easier to be afraid than it is to consciously think with focus. This is why so many of us stay trapped by fear. We don't actively try to conquer it. The more you know about how destructive fear is, the more you know how to overcome the aspects of your life that are holding you back. So if you've made it to this point, just a quick review. We've gone over importance and power of persistence, knowing your ego, monitoring your feelings, relaxing and recharging, recognizing success in your life, living with gratitude 24/7, removing all resentments, practicing forgiveness, deleting negativity, removing worry, not needing to be perfect, not worrying about what others think, deleting self-hatred, living solution-focused, and letting go of pain. I mean, you should feel really good about the progress that you made if you're here, if you're doing the work. You know you're doing great. Okay? And the skills that you need to completely get rid of fear right now, it will come back because you're human and you don't have to be worried about being perfect because you're human. But if you can do this, it's going to make a massive impact in your life. Have you ever seen the outside of a prison on TV, picture driven by one? But you've seen the outside of a prison, right? What surrounds it? Giant fences, right? Or these giant walls, big walls, you can't climb over them. Inescapable. See, what I say here is I built walls as high as mountains around me out of fear. If I was exposed to pain, a wall went up. I just kept walling stuff up to keep pain, fear away. But really, when you look at the outside of a prison, it's just made up of inescapable walls. So my fear helped me construct an inescapable prison I wasn't even aware of. We're not designed by creation to be isolated. We're designed to be cooperative with each other, working to advance creation. We're designed to recognize and work with the living creation inside of us. So right here, it's time to talk about who makes everything work together. And it's really time to bring in and talk about our ultimate partner for success, the one partner essential for life: God. Emotionally, what did you feel when I said God? Be honest with yourself. What are you feeling right now, and how does that help you, or how does that hurt you? Think about that. The words God or spiritual might put you off. I say that because they did for me. So if you're saying to yourself, oh my God, not God again, please relax. You're not alone. That was exactly where you're at. Okay. And it's not a fun place to be, but I don't blame you for being there. So before going further, I want to make it clear that I believe your faith is your business. I'm not promoting any religion or telling what you need or have to believe. Okay, that's your choice. I'm sharing the experience of recreating the conception of my higher power, who I choose to call God. I discovered through the use of the exercises and tools I've given to you that my relationship with God was destructive and had to be changed to realize happiness. You can't enjoy life if you think that there's a God above you with a hammer ready to come down and whack you on the head at any time. That's the kind of God that I lived with for a long time, and I realized that was no good. Okay. There's a point in my 30s when I completely turned my back on God. I won't ask you for anything, and you leave me alone. I blame God for everything bad in my life. I developed a deep resentment towards God. The last thing I wanted to do at this point in my 30s was talk or hear about God. I've had enough of God, is what I tell you. Or if I was being polite, I'd just say, yeah, no thanks. You've heard the phrase, it's not where you start, it's where you finish that matters. That applies here too. So if you've had a bad start, just let it go. Everything's about right now. All truth survives observation, and if you truly observe what you believe with persistence, there's no question you'll discover your truth. For 2 years in a row, I had perfect attendance in Sunday school at my local church. I was saved many times at different revivals and church gatherings. Every time we got together, everybody wanted to save everybody. Even though I've been saved, however, I bought the idea that if I broke God's rules, I'd be in real trouble. And what do you think happened? Worrying about breaking rules. Well, naturally, broke a few rules. And the guilt and shame of that just compounded to where I would continue breaking more rules. The more rules I broke, the more it made sense for me to separate myself from God. So I didn't want any trouble. You stay there, I'll stay here. We're good. Okay, good, good God. Okay. Separating myself from God, from a source of unconditional love, was nothing but a choice to separate myself from everything good. This doesn't mean that I didn't experience good things in my life and fun times during that period. Just in general, I wasn't happy. I just blocked God basically from having a real impact on my life. Let's look at our current environment, okay? The book or video, whatever you're listening, reading to, the chair you're sitting in, the ground that you're standing on, the phone that you're holding to hear this, your clothes, the air you're breathing, your body. What's it made of? Huh? When you look at the most basic level, everything, the non-living world, the living world, the body, your life, all of life, everything's made up of atoms. Supposedly, this is scientific fact. And what do we know about atoms? An atom has two regions. The first is the nucleus. And that's made up of protons, which are positively charged particles, and neutrons, which are negatively charged particles. Protons are positive, neutrons are negative. Or, sorry, neutrons are neutral. Well, I messed that up. Well, I'm reading here, and even reading, I messed up. See, don't have to be perfect. I'm not even worried about it. We're not even going to edit that out because it's just life. All right, in the nucleus, you have protons, which are positively charged, neutrons, which are neutral, and then a larger cloud outside of electrons, which are negatively charged. They spin around the nucleus. All atoms making up living and non-living matter are constantly vibrating and in motion. It may not look like it when you're holding a solid object like this, but this thing is vibrating, buzzing like crazy. So that means that if this is vibrating, electrons are spinning that make this up, right? Everything, the walls, even though they look still, my hand, even though it's moving. That means energy is constantly present with every atom. It's a fact. Now I want you to ask this question to yourself. What is the source of energy that science has proven exists in all life and all non-living material? Good. I did not truly seek to answer this question until I was in my 40s. I'd spent most of my life living like I was the center of the universe, ego-driven and in flight from God because of my fear of him. Here's a quick synopsis of what I believe today based on my experience. You can take it or leave it. This is just for example, okay? Whether you believe creation happened over 6 days, 6 million years, or in one big bang is irrelevant. The name that you give to your higher power, God, universe, ultimate creator, whatever it is, it's immaterial, it's irrelevant. The only power in this universe comes from one power. There is no multiplicity. Even though religions around the world give God many different names, there can only be one power, one creator, one God. Everything comes from this universal creative energy. And here's the amazing fact I was ignorant to. Each one of us is an individual expression of this power. I'm going to give you proof, okay? Right here. I've got copper water bottle. I'm going to get a little water on it, right? A little water on the lid here. It's full. You see this drop? It's dropping right off the edge. That little drop of water hanging there. What is the difference between that drop and the rest of the water that's in here? Same water, it's just volume, right? One little drop, one bigger drop. Well, if I took that same drop amount out of the ocean, what's the difference between that one drop and the entire ocean? Volume. That's the only difference. All other properties are identical. A bolt of lightning. What is the difference between a bolt of lightning and a spark? Volume. Okay. How is this not true for each and every one of us? The exact same truth is true. We are all individual expression of our Creator. The only difference is volume. God is alive inside every atom of our being, inside every atom of our creation. Now, take note that I said we are all an individual expression of God, our Creator. I did not say that we are gods. There can only be one power, just like there can only be one answer for the mathematical equation of 1 plus 1. It can only be two. There's no other answer. So it doesn't matter what you call this power. The good news is that God desires all for us to be happy, joyous, and free. And because we're made in the likeness of our Creator, we have been given the power to create with our thought. Our purpose, I believe, is to advance creation using the talents we have been given in full partnership with the infinite intelligence inside us. The walls that we construct out of fear, they keep us from doing this. We worry and make accusations about other faiths. Our ego-driven thinking creates a conception of God that it is not true. The longer we hold this false conception in our minds, the further we separate ourselves from the abundant supply of all things good. When we come to believe that all truths withstand observation, then we give ourselves the freedom from judging what others believe. We leave the job to them individually to observe what they believe. And they can know that if they do observe and question their thoughts, they will find their truth. Easy. We don't need to be involved. So consider your relationship with God, Source, the divine creation, whatever name you give, in the same way. If this universal power is a part of us and lives within us, then universal knowledge is always available to us. Creative force does not trick us. It doesn't bring misfortune or seek to condemn us. Instead, what I call God gives us everything in abundance. Makes everything available to us. What's not good, that comes from our own manifestation. All we have to do is recognize our true partnership with God and conquer our fear. That quick. Our conception of God is the foundation of our relationship with Him. And this is really important because mine was off. Okay, I'm going to read it again. Our conception of God is the foundation of our relationship with Him. I'm going to read my whole story on this to you. I lived over 30 years with a conception of God that kept me from trusting Him. My former conception of God grew to where it terrified me. And guess who developed this terrifying conception? My ego. Through the use of the skills I learned and have shared with you, I came to a point where I asked myself if my conception of God was helping me or hurting me. I spent several weeks with this question, and when observation clearly showed my conception was not helping me, the door was open to ask more questions. Why do I have this conception? Who created this conception? I observed how my fear of God had evolved. I looked at where I'd placed blame on people, places, and institutions, where I didn't think life was fair. I observed my anger with God and how I blamed God for setting me up to fail. I asked myself if it was possible to change my conception of God. This concept of changing my conception of God was not new to me when I asked this either. I'd heard it many times before, but my fear of God had kept me from ever honestly asking this question. So when I finally did, what I observed was that I had a choice. I could keep my current conception and continue to live in fear, or I could change my conception and see what happens. I mean, that's pretty much, let's see what happens. We don't know. Facing the prospect of changing my conception, I was filled with ego-driven doubt. I battled these doubts for several weeks without much progress. So what I'm taking you through is about a month-long process I went through, really battling myself and if it was okay to change my conception. So one day I was standing in my bedroom and out of nowhere, should I say out of nowhere? It's written out of nowhere, but probably out of my subconscious because I've been planting good seeds. I've been doing the work, right? I was standing in my bedroom when out of nowhere, the thought came to me, maybe you should forgive yourself. I paused. Forgiving myself had been suggested to me before, but it never made sense. How can you forgive yourself? That doesn't make any sense. That's what I'd think or say. But all of a sudden, the idea of me forgiving myself was front and center. If I had not been active asking myself questions, I would have quickly dismissed this opportunity. But I saw, oh, we got an opportunity here. Shane's coming in the room. He sounds like he wants to make some big changes. So I asked myself, and you can ask yourself this too, can I forgive me? I didn't feel that I couldn't. Well, what would I forgive myself for? How would I do it? So I started literally pacing around my bedroom for a few minutes, asking myself these questions, trying to figure it out, looking at myself, coming to the mirror, looking, can I forgive you? And that same mirror I had stood in many times before, like looking at it and just being like, fuck you, man, fuck, just disappointed in myself. And now I'm looking in the mirror like, I'm about to forgive you. I remember wondering if I'd asked myself that before. And then I asked myself, have I been hating myself? I looked into the mirror questioning as if I'd been hating myself. I'm talking to me now in the mirror. Have I been hating me? And I've really started to feel sad, disappointed, even angry. Like, I can't believe it. I was like, you stupid son of a bitch, man. Jesus. That's literally what I was going through. I mean, I'm looking like, this person, the most important person in your life, right? Treating them terrible. And when I said, you stupid son of a bitch, Jesus, what do you think was going on? Observing or judging? Unaware, I immediately went from the practice of observing my thoughts to judging them. Just like that. My ego was waiting for this day. Like, we're going to do some real work, right? So I began pacing again, beating myself up for hating myself now. I was really insanely thinking. Oh, it's a long chapter, folks. All right, so I'm running around my room, pacing, figuring out that I've been hating myself, right? And then out of the blue, a couple of words. Don't judge. So I stopped pacing, I paused, and I said out loud, don't judge. And then I kind of laughed a little bit. I started to chuckle. I laughed out loud, don't judge. I said it out loud again, laughing more. I realized that right on the very verge of change, I allowed my ego to knock me off course, but it was quick. It didn't take long to get back, right? And so I was happy. I walked back into the bathroom, looking in the mirror. I stood there silent for about 30 seconds, looking into my eyes. Calm down. I forgive you. I looked in the mirror. I said, I forgive you. Felt a little awkward looking at myself saying that. So I said it again. I forgive you. Started to feel a bit more relaxed. Smiled. I forgive you. I love you. I started laughing out loud again, looking at myself saying, I forgive you. I love you, over and over. And I realized that God had not been judging me at all. Shane, I had been my judge all along. I had created every false conception about myself and God. And it was in that very moment that I gave myself permission to change my conception of God. My false conception was a force who is condemning, judging, punishing, up high on a mountaintop and completely out of reach. My new conception has evolved to one who is a loving, non-judging, cooperative force with the desire for me to experience an abundance of happiness, health, and wealth. You may have heard the expression, God is either for us or against us. My conception is there is no possibility for God to be against us because God lives inside each and every atom of our being. God cannot destroy God, and therefore God will not destroy me or you. How do we come to believe anything? We only believe when we create and accept the conception of that thing. Whether our conceptions are created by strong outside influences like families, celebrities, leaders, we all individually accept and live by our conceptions. We are individually 100% responsible for our conception of God, source, the divine. The definitions, observations, cultures, and religions outside you provide data and influence to create your conception, but nothing more. You are the sole acceptor of your conception of God. If your God isn't working for you, maybe it's time to observe your conception. Here's chapter summary. Fear, anxiety, and depression are our own creation. It's easier to be afraid than it is to consciously think. This is why so many of us stay trapped by fear. We don't actively try to conquer it. My greatest fear was God. Many of us were presented with the idea of God as an all-judging, condemning force that was looking for any reason to punish us. I bought into this idea early that God would punish me severely if I messed up. So what did I do? I messed up. What we humans do, we make mistakes. Imperfection is ultimately impossible, but we've adopted this false belief that we're supposed to be perfect. Pretty much crazy thinking. I learned that God lives inside of me and his knowledge and power are available to me always. Knowing this newer conception, I see that God is for me. God is for all of us. God is good, so am I. All right, easy training exercise today, or so we think. For today, start to ask yourself what your definition of a power greater than you is. Then ask yourself what it would feel like if you had a force that was unconditionally loving and abundantly granting good in your life. How would that feel? And if you've been down a road where you've been hurt in the church by somebody, or you don't like church, or I really don't care. I've been a member of many different churches. I regularly do not attend church because I think most of the pastors are weak. They're lukewarm. They're the water that Christ would spew out of his mouth. They don't, you know what I've been doing here? I've been challenging you to do stuff. And that's what a preacher should do. It should be a call to action. It should be a challenge. It shouldn't be a show where you go in and have some kind of performance with a bunch of people on stage and you have a talking head up there just talking. No, you're there to grow. And you know what? You go there, you walk out, you're like, okay, that's pretty good. But an hour later, it's over. You're not doing anything. Rarely are you doing something that they asked you to do. Why don't you start calling your pastor out? Tell them to grow a set of balls and start speaking the truth. I've got a friend, we're talking about starting one. It'll be a little bit different though. All right. So for today, ask yourself what your definition of that power is. And then ask yourself what it would feel like if you had a force that was unconditionally loving and abundantly granting of good in your life. How would that feel? Let's go deeper. You're going to need some privacy for this, okay? If you're like me, you will anyway. So take some time to just be with you. Find a mirror that you can look straight into. Don't use your phone. I want you to use a mirror. Smile at yourself and say, I love you. If you're feeling a tightness in your stomach after reading this, or your neck's, you're kind of getting nervous, that's okay. I experienced the same thing, all right? Truth is that I used to hate myself. I would often look in the mirror and say, fuck you, not I love you. Total opposite. Or I hate you. If you're not able to tell yourself I love you, start with I forgive you. But don't just run into your bathroom and say it, okay? Only do it when you can be completely honest with yourself. You'll know if you're being honest by how you're feeling. And if it is so hard for you to get there, why don't you look in the mirror and say, help me be willing to forgive you. Help me be willing to love you. You're not going there, you're just asking for some willingness. That's progress. That's better than turning around and saying, go fuck yourself. All right. Let's see, what do we got next time? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Wow. Final chapter. I'm going to show you something really cool in this video too. It may even be outdoors. We'll see. Anyway, it has been fun. I get fired up talking about this stuff because for a lot of my life, I wasn't fired up. I was just tuned out and wasted time and happiness. And nobody should do that. So that's what my mission is. I originally, when we talked about realizing the benefits of thinking better thought, right before I started this book, I set a lofty financial goal. But as I was into this book writing, I realized that goal was worthless because it was all about money. And I said, what experience do we want to have instead? And when I figured that out, like putting the pedal to the metal on a jet fuel dragster. I'm going to take you there tomorrow. All right. Go find you a mirror. Do the hard work. Think of better thoughts.